Let's see. Okay. So now you have spoken about yourself and your educational background,
Right.
Abhishek. Maybe if you can take us through your journey itself, right? What really kind of inspired you to make a career in this field, and what concrete, steps you took really to reach where you are today?
I think like most of the kids right now, and in fact, me as when I, did my 12th, I got into graduation, I was really not sure as to what I wanted to do. Right. Even after 12, I was not really sure whether I should get into commerce side of things, whether I want to get into more science side of things, whether I should do BTech, whether I should pursue commerce, whether I should pursue economics. And the only thing that captured my interest back then was computers. I really wanted to get into hotel management, but that's a whole
Yeah.
different story.
Mm-hmm.
But what captured my interest really was computers. And
Okay.
somehow it was one of the fields where I shined. Computers is one of the language that just worked for me. It just spoke to me really well. It became natural to me. So it just worked really well for me. And from that point onwards, I realized that, okay, fine, I realized something in computers is what I'll eventually pursue. But even after my graduation, I was in a state of flux, right?
Okay.
Because once you graduate, you see all your friends and colleagues get into different fields. Some took jobs, some went for masters, some went away and joined the family businesses and whatnot, right? So I had a couple of job options then. I got campus placement for a couple of companies, but I was just not sure if I want to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
But what I decided was maybe I'm still young enough to explore a few more things. And as one of the things that I was doing in my graduation, I was working on a lot of games. Since I was into programming, I started doing my semester projects or annual projects. Some of the annual projects, at least, I did make a game back then. I spoke to one of my professors, learned from them that this is a potential field and you can try and explore a little bit. It's still very early in the days. You can still explore. And if things don't work out, you always have job options. But you have to understand 12, 15 years back, it was impossible to, go on a field which is never heard of, right? Which is such unexplored field. You don't have any references to, or you don't know anyone, or you don't have any Sharma ji ka ladka who have probably done the similar thing, right? So it became really difficult. But I think with all the luck that I had in the world, my parents were really supportive on that because they knew that I had made paths for me till the point I was doing my graduation. So they were really okay with me pursuing and trying new things. So I then started learning more about filmmaking, digital content creation, art, and whatnot. I was anyways interested into the creative side of things. I was anyways creative interested into learning more about the digital content, digital art as such, and design, right? So I went ahead, took a break, took a whole 1 year break. I learned more about these, you know, platforms, these institutions, how the educational platform for all of these different sectors work, how is the industry for digital content or digital media or mass media for that matter, or design works. And then I prepared myself for a number of design colleges that are there in India, including NID, MIT, IIT Mumbai, and whatnot. I prepared myself for that, and luckily I got myself into MIT Pune,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
learned more about communications design. This was a post graduation diploma with them, so I learned more about the communications design. I did filmmaking and art. Masters in art and filmmaking is what I did with them,
Yeah.
and from there it opened up doors for me. I realized furthermore that okay, perfect, communication design is the part of. So you have to also understand communication design is a larger umbrella which holds multiple design fields under it. Communication is basically anything that communicates with the other side of a user. There is a flip side of industry which is called industrial design, which is what you see with automobile design or product design or anything that has to do with the physical existence of a product is called industrial design. Anything that talks about a virtual side of things, from films to games to anything that you interact with on your phone, is called communications design, right? So I
Mhm.
learned more
Correct.
about that, did more a lot of that, and then from there I applied for master's program in game design and development. in one of the oldest universities in Europe, which is Aberte University. This is one of the universities that came up with the formal structure for game development education. One of the very first universities in the world will came up with the structure of the formal education that you can pursue in game development. So I did that course with them. I went to UK, moved abroad for a couple of years, worked with some brilliant people over there. And then after finishing my education, finishing my master's, I came back to India and worked on a lot of different things after that. And that's what established this whole journey of me reaching to a point where I am right now. Um, I'm one of the very few lead designers throughout India. And that's also because game development itself is a very niche industry. And if you
especially in
talk about,
India.
yes, and if you talk about the specialization that I have, it becomes even further niche. There are a lot of programmers, there are a lot of artists, but only a handful of designers throughout India, right? And this is also to do with the fact that Indian game industry is evolving. So most of
Correct.
the designers, most of the design work happens abroad. But we
Hmm.
were able to bring that difference also in India, that we are now able to establish a lot more strong design field. And that's what I've been doing with Ubisoft also, right? I've been working with them to establish a very strong design field in India as well. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I did, and that's how I landed where I am right now.
Interesting journey, and I think through your journey there are a lot of messages which are getting conveyed and given. There are parents as well in this session, so I would want to highlight that it's okay that if the child or the student is unclear, even if they are in grade 10th, 11th, 12th, what do they finally want to do, it's fine. Exploring and like supporting them in any endeavors which helps them explore different fields is fine. Eventually they will land to a place where they belong, given they got good opportunities to explore. So even sometimes parents get like little concerned when the students think of a gap year as an option. That is okay, provided the gap year is being utilized in a productive way, right? So definitely that's the message which I would want to reiterate through your journey, Abhishek. So thank you so much for taking us through that. Now let's get into the weeds of the game design and development as an industry itself. So let us first start with just you describing a typical day of a game designer, specifically from an entry level perspective, because we have high schoolers here, and that's how we want to really target the entry level thing first. I know there are like roles and responsibilities changes when you get into middle management, senior management, but let's talk about the entry level and touching the roles and responsibilities there.
Of course. But before I do that, I just want to jump back on something you interestingly said, which is taking a break here. I just like to clarify one thing over here, guys. When I took a break, I decided to move away from my home, right? I decided to get into a little uncomfortable zone, learn the harsh reality of the world. So I completely agree to the fact that break year is perfectly fine if you make it productive, if you make good use of it, right? Break year is no taboo. Please don't consider it a taboo. It's perfectly fine, but make a good use of it. I stepped out of my comfort zone. I stepped out away from my home. I enrolled myself at multiple institutes. I used to work from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. during that break time, just to go around different institutes, different studios, learning how these studios function, how these institutes function. In that one break year, I designed and made 3 films, which also got
Oh,
one of the best film award during that time.
nice.
So please make sure that you do something which is guiding you to the next step. All
Very
right,
important.
now jumping to the question that you asked. Now, video games, right? It's interesting. We hear video games and like it's all about fun, and it is. It is indeed. We are not trying to solve any of the real world problems here. Video games is generally about entertainment, right? So what's important is to be entertained yourself first, right? It's really important that you enjoy the work, and that's one of the biggest reason why an industry, at least 90% of the industry population or the people who are working in this industry, the professionals, they are in the industry for the love of the craft. They really love video games, they really love making video games, or they really love the fact that they do something which is helping them make video games. Not all the artists are really keen into video games, but they love art. Not all the programmers are really keen into making video games, but they love programming, they love the language, right? So with that, if you if I talk about designer and how as a game designer the very early years of your career would look like, it was essentially be working with some creative heads, essentially be your senior or lead designers, not directly working with directors, of course that takes a little bit time, but directly working with leads or creative heads or maybe even directors depending on the organization, and trying to, you know, brainstorm and come up with the problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
See, design is all about finding solutions to a problem, right? So when we talk about game designers are essentially the heads trying to find the solutions to any problem that you encounter on day-to-day basis in a video game, right? So designing a video game is not easy task. Designing a video game, you have to probably answer infinite number of questions for that matter. And genuinely intentionally coding infinite because the conditions and probabilities can be n number. You don't know. You're basically designing and creating a whole new world which can have n number of possibilities and n number of things to itself, right? So that's what designers do. They come up with a rule set. They work with some creative heads to define the world, to define the gameplay, to define the what players gonna do. And if all of that is already being worked upon, then you try to solve the problems that your team is having on day-to-day basis, which is to do with the
Mm-hmm.
fact from as simple as how long a player would be able to jump. I'm sure all of you played Mario, right? In a Mario, a decision making was from the aspect how high can you jump to what distance can you jump, and that's also a decision that needs to be taken by a game designer, right? So it's from that small thing to the whole extent of how different levels in Mario would look like, what all Mario can do, how mushrooms would, you know, help Mario, if Mario can jump on top or on bottom, can Mario swim? Can Mario fly? Can Mario jump on the flag? Can Mario jump on the pipes? Can Mario go inside the pipe? Just to name a few. So this is what your day to day would look like. But eventually, yes, it will evolve into a lot more, into a lot better things. And of course, when you enter the design field, it's very hybrid in nature. You get to do a lot of things because you are a designer. You'll get to also script, which is by what I mean is a little bit of programming here and there, not essential, but a little bit of programming here and there is required. You'll also get to work very closely with artists because you need to make them understand what is in your head that they can then, you know, put it on the paper or put it on the digital platform for you, which is visually appealing. And then you also need to work very closely with the programmers to make them understand how and what the game should act and function like.
Great, thank you. And I am receiving few questions and comments. And let me be very stern here, Arjun. I will only ask relevant questions, not something which you may want to ask, but not relevant to the session today. Okay. And you would also get the responses to few of your questions through what I am going to ask further, right? So be patient there. And if you put a relevant question, I'll make sure I'll ask it. Okay. Now let's move on to the next one. Uh, Abhishek, if you can give some insights into, though you touched upon it a little bit, but still, if you can give some insights into what's the process like and what are the broad functions involved so that students out here, they can align, you know, their thought process in terms of what they want to do in the gaming industry to the functions as well. Maybe just a 500 feet view would help as well.
Okay. So when you mean process, you mean the overall development process, the game
So the
development
game
process.
design and development process as
Okay.
such.
Let's talk a little high level in that case because in detail there are a
Yeah.
lot of
Indeed.
intricacies to it. So
Yeah.
for any game to be made, you require three critical positions. One is a designer, one is your programmer, and third one is your artist, right? A lot of companies have way more positions than this, but these are the core three. And then fourth, most important one is production. But production is a lot more to do with business and project management than to do with the actual development. Although the project management and the business side of thing on the games are very different, but that's again a lot of higher side of things. I'll not trouble you with that right now, right? When it comes to design, like I talked about, design itself can be divided into multiple different fields depending on your interest. There are level designers, there are system designers, there are combat designers, there are narrative designers, there are uh,
Mhm.
so many more, right? Encounter designers, quest designers. There are a number of fields in there as well, right? So it depends entirely on the interest. But if you start your education at all in the design field, you learn about all of them. Income programmers, again, in programmers there are very specific specializations. There are people who just deal with UI UX. There are people who only deal with certain components in the game. Of course, there are certain specific terms which I don't want to bore you with, but just to give you a glimpse, there are things called 3Cs programmer, systems programmer, engine programmer, whatnot. But of course, nothing to worry
Okay.
about, because all of these things you learn when you get into, or you become a professional in programming. And then there are artists. Artists also have a lot of specialization. There are character artists, there are VFX artists, there are environmental artists, there are concept artists, there are 3D artists, there are cinematic artists, right? A lot of different variations, a lot of different fields. Under artists, animators also fall in. It's a little hybrid, but they also fall in. So again, it's up to you. It's up based on your interest, what you decide. But these are the three different fields that have a synergy in making a video game, right?
Okay.
At a high level. Does that answer your
Understood.
question?
I think it does, because I was just hoping that you can touch upon the broad functions, which you did. So thank you for that. Now, let's talk about, what do you think are the specific qualifications in terms of like educational qualifications which are needed to make the career in this field, at least to start with it?
Okay, so a little difficult question to answer, to be honest,
Okay.
because there are so many variations in the industry. Like I said,
Mhm.
designers, artists, programmers. Some fields require a very formal educational structure, whereas some feel a little open. And it depends on what you have done and how what you have produced, right? So if you talk
Okay.
about programming, again, I won't touch bases on the unique case scenarios or things like how Facebook came into existence, that people can be dropouts and no. So all of that is very superficial. That can happen, of course, but you need to be a genius to be able to do that, and probably be master in your craft before you even learn about the craft. And that can happen
Okay.
depending on your interest, but let's not touch on that. What we can talk about is, for if someone is interested into programming, of course, they need to have a formal education in computer science. They need to have
Mhm.
a great deal of understanding in some computer languages. One of the biggest or one of the most used languages in computers or in games is C++ and C sharp, right?
Mhm.
So if you have that understanding and if you go through formal education structure for computer science or any other, uh, computer programming or any other, there are tons of other fields also now other than computer science also that you can pursue, which will help you get into game industry. But if you have a very structured education, and if your knowledge base speaks about a good structural education or good understanding of game programming or just programming for that matter, then that's doorway to enter game programming.
Okay.
For art, now art would require a little bit structure as well. Of course, artists, anyone can be artist, but it also comes from the fact that the game art is a lot more technical than what we see, right? Game art is not about just you being able to very creative and you create something. No, game art also requires you to be, and you do have a little bit of technical understanding, right? Because
Okay.
games are done in real time. They are made, and this it's a very complex, synergy between art and programming. You need to have an understanding of how the art for a digital platform is done. And even
Okay.
for a digital platform, when you're doing an art, it is different for video games. So any form of digital art or any form of formal art education will help you enter the game industry. But depending on the variations of the art itself, you'll need to have further education done. So if you just go through, say, fine arts background, right, then they'll help you get into the game industry as a concept artist, but it may
Okay.
not help you get into the industry with 3D or animator or technical artists or things like that. For that, there are other educational, platforms or other educational pathways that you have to take through. Probably get through some sort of a, technical courses or probably learn a lot more about 3D or learn a lot more about topography or things like that. But that is also something that can be very well fit in with the number of educational modules that are available right now in the industry,
Okay.
and you can learn from them. But the very easy method is to just learn about the basics of art. And frankly, art is one of those very rare fields in which, if you're good at your craft, you may not even require a fancy degree. You can have a
Mhm.
baseline education done, and your portfolio should be, talking to the person who's going to hire you, and then you can get into the industry as well. But again, you can evolve yourself. This industry is like medical profession. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to compare apples and oranges, but why I use that as an option? Because in medical profession, every single day technology is changing. And if your doctors are not keeping themselves up to date, you'll probably not have a good enough treatment. Similarly, in gaming, technology changes even further rapidly. You must have yourself seen how your computers are evolving, right?
Mhm.
10 years back, the computers, and now computers are very different, right? So game developers also need to be constantly upgrading themselves, right? Who thought of VR can be a gaming platform? But one of the biggest games in the VR is also, made in 3D and made on engine. It's a lot more craft than it is, right? And then lastly, it's design. For design, yes, you need to have a little bit of formal education. One of the things that I really try to emphasize on is having ideas don't make you a designer. Ideas can come from anywhere. Designer's profession is to execute those ideas, and execution requires a lot more understanding. Designer will be the only individual in the entire company who will have understanding of art, programming, production, as well as design. So design requires a lot more understanding than anything else. There are tons and tons of formal education methods available, but there is, if you don't find yourself a very specific path for game design as such, you can always evolve something of your own. You can always craft something of your own. You can have education done in programming, and then from there you can traverse into design. You can have your educational background done in art, and then you can traverse into design. But then a lot of self learning is required, and you can always get into a professional game development program, learn more about design, and get it from there. So a lot of methods, a lot of different pathways to enter, but these are some basic ones.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Abhishek. And I'll take one relevant question from Nitin, who is asking pertaining to the educational background itself, but his specific question is maths, science mandatory in grade 11th and 12th to get into gaming?
Depends on what's your interest lies in, right? If you're see, a lot of times in your career you might not at all require mathematical computations, right? But for me, it came out as a great help. I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times when you see a game, and I was giving you a very basic example of Mario, how much distance can you jump? That's also computed maths. You decide as to how much distance you want your player to jump, depending on the whole length of the level, what distance this player can jump. There's a whole lot of maths that's involved in that also. And this is a very, very
Mhm.
basic game which came out like 30 years back. The games now are very complex, from the
Mhm.
point how much damage a single weapon can do to a point how much healing can happen and what sort of synergy is there, and given the fact that there's real money is also involved and so much more, math actually becomes critical. For you to be a programmer, maths definitely by default that you need. Math is absolute requirement for anyone to get into programming, right? For arts, yes, no, none of these things is required. Artists can be, or art education can come from any background that you have, and you can learn about art from anywhere you're coming from. But again, a lot of hard work is required when it comes to art, programming, or design.
Great. And there is a follow-up question from Nitin itself. And Nitin, if you want, I can just enable your settings and you can speak as well. But for now, let me read out your follow-up question. What lines can a student enter into gaming without having maths or science in 11th, 12th? I think definitely the design aspects or artistry aspect. Could you hear me, Abhishek? Was
So where
I
I lost you? No,
audible?
yeah, I lost you somewhere in between. Can you just repeat yourself, please?
Okay. So Nitin has asked a follow-up question. right? In a way, you had indicated that, but if you have uh, some more insights into it, that would be helpful. What lines can a student, or maybe function, can a student enter into gaming without having maths or science in grade 11th or 12th?
See, if not maths, if not science, that's okay. That's fine. If you don't have understanding of science, that's absolutely fine. Uh, no hard stops there. Maths, if you don't have maths, then you'll be limited by the fact that you won't have proper, or you won't. It won't be easy for you to get into any of the computer programming courses, right? Any of the computer programming graduation platforms that there are, from computer science to bachelor in computer applications to BSc and programming and whatnot. There are so many others as well, but you won't be able to get into those without maths. So you can still pursue your formal education in design. There are a lot of colleges which offer you a design courses from very early on. You can do your graduation in design as well, and that'll probably be the time when you can start exploring and understanding what is it that your interest lies in. A lot of times, and guys, I can tell you from my experience, a lot of times when you get into the college, when you get into the formal educational structure, that's where you get to start realizing, oh, this is not, I get it, I love this, but this is not my niche, or this is not what I'll be pursuing throughout my life. And that happens a lot. I've seen people who completed their engineering and electronics, and then they switched from that and came to design, and then they did communications design, and then switched from that and worked as a transport, or get into automobile design, and then they worked for Maruti or for Mahindra or whatnot, right? So a lot of these transitions happen. It's okay if you don't have maths or science, that's fine, but certain limitations are definitely applied after that because of the structures that are provided within the country. But yes, you can still pursue a lot of different fields at the same time and still open gateways for you in the game industry.
Okay. So Abhishek, at least for me, I couldn't hear you well. It was getting like cut off
Oh,
in between, maybe because of some network issue. So I don't know if anyone can just comment if they heard Abhishek clearly, especially the last one, or it might be my internet connection itself then. Okay, fine. I think it maybe it was at my end. Okay, now thank you for that, Abhishek. So now let's talk about what factors do you think, and given you have taken this journey, would you really suggest students to consider, right, for shortlisting their courses, be it at a bachelor's level or at a master's level?
see, especially I would recommend, especially at a bachelor's level, try and get yourself into any of these industry with a little open mind. It doesn't matter what you're trying to pursue at a bachelor's level, but try and get in with a little open mind. You can, of course, start yourself with, and frankly, you can start with anything. You can start yourself with some formal education in programming, start yourself some formal education in art, or anything else also if you want to. And masters kind of, in some case scenarios, become a gateway for you to switch if you at all do not understand. Like I switched, right? I did my formal education as a computer programmer, right? And then for masters, I switched. I decided probably no, I don't want to pursue my career as an IT individual. I don't want to do that, so I'll switch. Of course, I had job options at that time, but that did not make the decision easy, right? It just it just helps. It just becomes a gateway for you to probably explore even further. So for masters, you can then, if your interest at all switch, or if you're not clear on things, you can always switch and explore a little further when it comes to masters. Now that is the time you can probably explore, you can also learn, but masters becomes a gateway where you have to decide as to what is it that you want to do, because not always you get an option to do multiple educations, right?
Mm.
Education is not cheap, it doesn't always come easy, and it takes a lot of hard work also for you to get through your exams and everything, right? So graduation, be open minded. Masters is a second opportunity where you can probably switch or probably decide. Not always, but in some cases, yes, that really happens. Some things to consider when you're doing this: make sure that the institutes that you're applying for, the colleges that you're applying for, have a proper affiliation and they are registered under the international education boards as well. At times this there's a formal check that happens. There are multiple websites that'll help you understand whether the specific institute or university or college is registered under the international education standards or not, right? Why I say that is because given the state and the pace of the world that we are in, these global borders will cease to exist as we go into
Mhm.
future, right? Which would mean you'll have a lot more freedom to go around the world. Even now, you would have seen that people are easily traveling, and it'll become even more easier. The problem happens when you did your graduation and you're trying to apply for some other visa, and they ask for your education. And at that time, you send your transcripts, and they'll be like, no, 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 this doesn't fall under our criteria of education. That is the problem. Thankfully, most of the universities in India which are registered under the under the board, under the educational board, they're all validated at the international level. Only some of the private institutes are not, so nothing to worry about. It's rather simple than anything. Second thing to consider is that don't go for just the big names, universities or big names. Try to go for the education. Try to see which institute offers the best education, best learning. Because a lot of institutes, especially when you go to college now, you'll see this transition. You'll see immediate change in the way you were learning until now. Schools, very formal structures, sit for 8 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, whatever. And you have these specific hours, you do this, specific subjects, specific marks, specific courses. Once you enter college, some of the colleges don't care. What they care about is that you have enough attendance and you sit for the exams, right? They're not really bothered whether you're paying attention in the class. Teachers are not there to pinpoint and say you don't know, or you know, or you're doing this or you're not doing that. Some fields they do that because it's very much required. Some fields they don't. Try and find yourself the college or the institute which best fits your requirement, and try and make use of that opportunity and learn. Don't find yourself a college which doesn't care, because then it's really gonna just harm you, nothing else.
I think with your response, I can bring up one question from one of the parents. She's asking college if you can recommend colleges in India where one can pursue game design. Any recommendations from your side? Given you would, I'm hoping that you would be recruiting game designers as well, right, in your team. So seeing their educational pathways where they did their education, and if you have any recommendations there.
So if you want to go for something which is very well organized and very well into design, and which will give your kid a lot of exposure also, I'll always recommend NID, which is National Institute of Design, which will help you get into the design field. Programming, you can get into any college throughout India which offers good computer science education, and that should open doorways into design, into game industry. And then arts also, any of the applied art colleges or design colleges should open up those doors for your kid to get into the art side of things in game industry. There are a lot of these private institutes which I'll be really careful of, because some of these institutes are just scam Ponzi schemes which will not really help. There are some institutes which are really good as well. If you really want to get into just the gist of design and programming as well, or not programming, just the design and art, there are a few more colleges other than NID. You can also go for MIT Institute of Design, which is in Pune. You can also apply for communication design from IIT Mumbai. You can also apply for Symbiosis. You can also apply for Whistling Woods College in Mumbai. And there are a few more. There are a few more institutes which are doing this now. I think even Petroleum University, which is a very well-known university in India, they also recently started their design institute. So I've heard that good things about that as well. So maybe even that's a good option. But try and find multiple options. Try and see what is it that you want to do, and if not, it's okay. Try and keep your avenues open. at least for the graduation. So go for a little bit more formal educational structure also if you feel like, but you can always move to a very informal structure which is into design. And some of the best institutes, like I mentioned, are as NID, MIT, IIT Mumbai, and whatnot.
Great. Thank you so much for your recommendations, Abhishek. Now I'll move on to, I think, one of the pertinent questions which is always lingering on the students' mind and the parents' minds as well, right? What are the rewards of being in this profession? And if it is possible for you, if you can also touch upon the financial rewards, particularly, right?
Okay, a bit difficult to answer again. See, rewards are generally very subjective, right? Like if you talk about me, I have in the last 10 years, I have been guest lecturer for multiple institutes, multiple colleges, trying to train kids on game design. I have been part of so many jury councils where people, kids come up and make their own games. I've been a speaker at multiple conferences, and that's really rewarding for me, right? Whereas the same thing, I've seen a lot of people in my, organization as well, where this is not rewarding for them. So this is one part of things where you need to really excel. See, like there's a very big misconception around reward and finances, right? You can earn and you can be rewarded in any field, in literally any field you are, given the fact that you're good at it, right? You need to be really good at what you're doing and really need to be passionate about what you're doing, and I can guarantee you'll be rewarded, right? I'll give you a very basic example which I heard 10 years back, 15 years back. In India, hotel management was really frowned upon, right? People, especially a lot of, people who are coming from this very structured, families where they had like, everyone did BTech, so you'll also do BTech, or everyone did talk, MBA, so you'll also get into business, or everyone is an MBBA, so you'll also become a doctor. No. Problem is, with all of that, hotel management took a very downside, right? But you see now, even people who did not do hotel management, who were just passionate about things, you have so many platforms for them, from Master Chef to so many other, media channels that are opening up. And one thing you have to really appreciate, the fact, I know a lot of people are really scared of it, is also the power of social media. I know that it's really addictive and it has a lot of negative side to it, but that also opened up a lot of professional avenues for the people. Of course, there's a time to it. I'm not saying you have to start it now. No, there is a very specific time to it. You have to be master of your craft to be able to even do that. So as long as you can establish that interest and become a master of your craft, you'll earn money no matter where you are. As far as I go, see, when I started, the industry was really niche. Barely anyone knew about it. When I used to tell people that I do game design, more than 90% of the time, I've heard a response, oh, so you do animations. And that's not it. That's not what I do. I do not do animations at all. But game design is a very, very niche field. When I started, I struggled. Of course, you have to see, again, this is also one of the things that you have to make very clear with you. Without struggle, you'll not see success. So it's perfectly fine to struggle in the early years. If you see that, oh no, the first year out of the college, I should have 20-30 lakhs ka package with me. That's not gonna happen.
That doesn't
Maybe you are
happen.
lucky. Maybe you are lucky. You get acquired by one of these big tech giants that they offer you that. But more often than the reality is that when someone campus placements happen and you hear these terms, oh, you know what, this kid, and let's just use Sharma ji ka ladka. Sharma ji ka ladka got 30 lakhs ka package right from the college and the campus placement. The 30 lakhs package is actually divided. Your in-hand salary comes down to only 7 lakhs. There is ESOPs over it, which is of 15 lakhs, which you'll only get after 5 years in the institution, right? And that's how it becomes 30 lakh a package, which is not the reality really, right? So, and even if it is, my point is, sometimes this early on successes also leads to struggles later on. Point being, struggle will definitely happen, whether it's early on or later on. You just have to make a peace with it. You have to struggle to be successful. Struggles can be different. Struggle also is very subjective. For some people, struggle can be financial struggle. For some people, struggle can be professional struggle. For some people, struggle can be peace of mind struggle. But struggle has to be there, right? So when I started, yes, I also struggled financially more than anything else. Also, from the fact that India had very limited game development opportunities, so I had to go through some of the points where I was not making games of my liking. But eventually, I started doing that also, and eventually, even financials changed. Once I got the opportunity to do the things that I really wanted, I also excelled, and the finances also started excelling because I was excelling in my day to day tasks. So it's an easy. I mean, if you excel at something, again, I'm just reiterating on the same fact again and again. Just be passionate, be open enough to struggle, and if you keep on sticking to the craft that you really want to master, finances are never a big deal. I mean, it'll eventually be sorted.
Great. Certainly words of wisdom, and I am really thankful to you to being so candid about even the financial journey, because see, our goal is that our students who are listening to this, they are making an informed decision, because that is the most important thing. You never know what the outcome would be, but if you're gathering the right information and then making a decision, you may not have maybe, like, it's a very very strong word, regrets per se, right? Because you made an informed decision, and that's what you'll stick by as such, right? Now I know we have like 7 8 minutes left, so let me ask one more question, which is I think again a very common question I have been getting in my practice, irrespective of the career I talk about, which is pertaining to artificial intelligence, right? So, what kind of impact do you see specifically from a job market within the gaming industry? Because when I studied the numbers, they are definitely supporting the growth and the demand. But what is the impact of the newer technology from the job landscape within this industry? Is it going to shrink? Is it going to really create newer kind of roles? I know it's a very difficult question to answer for anyone, but if you can just share your candid thoughts, that would be helpful.
Very interesting because this is a hot topic right now in the industry as well, right? So the only thing I can say is human evolution never supported change, right? Humans are not meant for change. Okay, so check with your parents, check with your grandparents. But when computers were introduced at the government jobs level, there was this massive revolt. People went on strike, banking sector went on strike, railways went on strike because people thought it'll eat up our jobs. But that did not happen. What happened instead was India became one of the biggest tech giants in the world. In fact, to support and to offer more than anyone in the world the IT and the tech jobs that we have in the world right now. We excel at computers, at making them, doing jobs for everyone in the world, and even leading some of the biggest tech giants in the world, right? So it's it's always about embracing the change. If you embrace it, it's perfectly fine. So with that statement, AI is nothing but a tool for you to streamline your job, right? I'm not gonna be one of those who simply make the statement, oh, AI will not take away your jobs. AI will take away your jobs if you're not good at what you're doing, right? But AI will help you excel at your job if you embrace it and use it to the benefits. AI will streamline any work that was earlier done in 7 days can now be done in 3 days, right? And that's the power of AI. So that means you got an early chance to use it, to embrace it, and make best use out of it to excel quickly, right? And that's how it can be used. It's with any industry, in fact. And AI is going to impact every single industry in the world right now. So as long as you're using it, you're embracing it, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Just learn about it, try to live with it, and you'll be okay. Don't be scared of it.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this. There are a few questions. Maybe I'll take one from the audience again. So Sharmishta is asking, do we have to work long hours in this industry?
Okay, so I'm trying to answer it in a way that I don't sound like a villain. But see, long hours now, it's very, again, it's very situational. It only depends on situation to situation. I won't deny to the fact that yes, in some cases you might have to work long hours, but that's not always the case, right? Game industry is relatively very chill. It's very calm, composed. It's very easygoing industry. Like I said, we're not trying to solve world hunger here. We're trying to create modes of entertainment. There is a lot of pressure because entertainment is not always cheap. There are millions and millions of dollars at stake. So there'll be pressure, because of which there can be times when you have to spend a little overtime, but that's not always the case. Because now, if you start working for some bigger firms, they have very strict policies against overtime as well, or working long hours as well. I can quote only one thing in my experience in the last 8 years that I have been since I've taken up a lead position, I have made sure not even a single employee under me had to work over hours. I make sure that they don't have to pick a call after 6 p.m. and I make sure they don't have to work after 6 p.m. at all. And they have easy enough, week to leave the job at 6 and be comfortable about it the next day, because they know they did not leave anything hanging. They can come back and pick it up. So as long as you get good management, good managers, as long as you get a good working environment, you don't have to worry about it. And if you are worried about the long hours, that can happen in any industry. It's worse in IT. I've seen it. Trust me, it's at times worse in IT. It's in fact worse in any other situation also. Guys, recently we all went through pandemic also. So you know how worse or how horrible it can get even for doctors, where generally a lot of people come back with the statement, oh, if you want to earn money, become a doctor. The reality of thing is, to be a doctor, to be able to reach a point where you earn that, or to be able to reach a point where you get that respect, you have to study a lot. I really wanted to be a doctor once. And I was so much into it that I started reading medical journals. I started reading a lot of medical books. And that was right after my 10th. You have to decide between commerce and science. And I was so much into it that I started reading. I started learning about it. I wanted to really be it. But what came to my realization is it's not easy. Your 12th science book is this thick. Doctor's book are this thick. And not just one. There are hundreds of those, right? So it's not always easy. Again, I'm not trying to scare you, but the fact is every field requires a lot of dedication. So hold on to your dedication and things will be fine.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Abhishek. And I don't know why, Arjun, you cannot stop asking your questions, but let me just be little lenient with you, because again, I feel you haven't got the objective of this session. It's a career awareness session, but it sounds like you are a gamer, and that's why you are, and even Krishna as well. So I'll just be little lenient and I'll ask this one question. Abhishek, if you could answer that for him. Which engine is good for quick game development, UE4 or Unity?
Okay, so I get it that yes, you're right. He is into games. It depends on the type of project you're doing. Unity is really good for your mobile games or for your quick prototypes. Unreal offers a much more variety, but Unreal also requires a lot more control. So if you're looking at something for a smaller platforms, mobile or handheld, or even something for web, or even something which is quick, easy iteration on prototype, go for Unreal. So go for Unity. But if you're looking for something which is a higher render quality, higher computation, uh, complex mechanics and complex iterations, then go for Unreal. But above both of these, if you're just looking something for prototype, I'll recommend Game Maker.
Okay, great. I think that might be the biggest takeaway for them in this session, because they have been asking these questions and they're also giving you a lot of suggestions, which maybe I'll share with you later on, because this is not the right platform for it. But with that, I know we are just like, I think we have overshooted by a minute, but I can't stop myself from asking this one question, because I think this is again very, very important for our students and parents to know. What is the most common maybe myth or misconception which you have encountered from like students or even like maybe young adults who are thinking of making their career in this field?
Very simple answer. Game industry is not a job, it's a hobby. Don't do that. Every industry can turn into a very awesome career and even a profession. So I know the misconception also comes from the fact that we haven't seen that sort of a growth in India, or we're not exposed to the industry as such in India. But I think Shubhi itself shared a lot of numbers when we began this session. From that itself, you should know that the industry is massive. It's much bigger than the music and movie industry put together throughout the globe. The games industry is much bigger than the music and
Correct.
movies industry put together, whether it's Hollywood or Bollywood. Put them together, put the entirety of movie industry, music industry together, and the game industry is far bigger than that, right? All of you hold a mobile, and I can guarantee there's not even a single individual who would not have a game on their mobile phone, right? And that's purely the power of this engagement that the games offer, right? So do not consider that as a hobby. It genuinely is a profession. I am sitting right in front of you talking to all of you guys, and I have had more than of a decade experience in this industry itself. So please be open-minded towards these new avenues, new industries, and that should be it.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And I had a lot more questions and even a rapid fire round, but in the interest of time and respecting the time which our audience has invested today and you as well, Abhishek, I would close the session here today. And maybe if there are more questions, more relevant questions from our audience, then I can take those via our WhatsApp and I can pass it on to Abhishek as well. So, with that, thank you so much, everyone. I hope this was an insightful session for all of you. And again, parents here who were little concerned about giving that kind of doorway to their kids in terms of even considering this as a career option. You know that number support, an actual industry practitioner shared his insights as well. So I would say keep it in your consideration set if your child is considering that. Okay, so with that, thank you once again, Abhishek, and have a good Sunday, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye bye.